Alex Popham. I'm the 4-H agent here in Breckinridge County, part of UK's College of Ag, Food and Environment's Cooperative Extension Service. And today I will be making one of the 4-H sculpture projects, a clay container. So to complete this project for our 4-H festival and qualify for state fair, you will need a clay container with a lid. So we'll get started. All you need for this project is some air dry clay, and then sculpting tools, a ruler, and string are also really helpful. So I've started off with some air dry clay. When I took it out of the package, it was very dry. So I added a little moisture, I added a little water and worked it in. And now we have clay with a very smooth surface. Now it's ready to use. Now, since the clay container needs a lid, I'm gonna separate about 1/3 of the clay and set it to the side, and we'll sculpt the lid after we sculpt the bottom or the container itself. So a trick to do this is to grab some string, and instead of having to cut it with a knife, I'm just gonna use a string and eyeball about 1/3. And that's a quick, easy way to separate and cut about 1/3 of the clay. So I'm gonna set this to the side and we'll grab it and make the lid a little later. So with the remaining clay, I'm going to make a pinch pot. Now, you're probably familiar with a pottery wheel where you throw the clay and sculpt it that way, but that particular technique, according to archaeologists, didn't really exist until about 4,000 years ago. Before that, most people were making pottery using the pinch pot method or coil pots or slabs. So today we're going to be following that tradition and we're going to be making a pinch pot. And this is a great way for any beginners like myself to sculpt and really get a feel for the clay and get comfortable with it. So to begin, we need to really work with our clay and form a nice smooth ball. So you can roll it on a counter or a surface that you have at home, and then also use your hands. Don't worry about the clay getting a little messy. That's part of the fun. Once you have a nice smooth ball, place it in one of your hands. I happen to be right-handed, so I'm gonna place the clay in my left hand, and I'm gonna use my right thumb to begin the sculpting. So to sculpt a pinch pot, we're just going to pinch a hole by pushing our thumb down the center of that ball of clay. Now, you don't want to punch it all the way through, but you want a good start to your pot. So something like that is acceptable. And then you're going to use your fingers and really work the clay, continue pinching and moving the clay so that you end up with the walls of your container. You want them all to be the same thickness. And if you're new to sculpting like I am, you might need a ruler to double check and really determine that size. You do want the thickness to be consistent throughout your clay container, particularly the walls. If you have some super thin spots, it can dry out faster at different rates, and you end up with more cracking and potential damage to your pot. All right, once you feel like you have a good clay container, you want to make sure and smooth it out. For the sake of time, I'm going to move on, but at home you'll want to really take time and smooth all those surfaces, and you might have to add a little water and maybe some slip, so a mixture of clay and water and really smooth out all of your surfaces. Now I'm going to use my ruler and just see what the diameter of my clay pot is, and that's a pretty consistent diameter. I'm about 6 inches across on all sides, which is excellent. You want to make sure you have a nice good circle. Or if your pot, if you want to get really creative, your pot could look like an animal or a building. So have fun with it. I'm just sticking pretty traditional today. So you'll set your container to the side. And now I'm going to grab the rest of the clay and start making that lid. And I want my lid to hang off over top of my clay container. So I'm going to form a ball, and we're going to repeat that pinch pot process. Once I have a nice smooth ball, I'm going to use my thumb, and then I'm going to use the rest of my fingers to work that clay out. I'm just rotating it so you get a good view. And just like with the bottom of our container, we want the top of our container to not crack. So you don't want to make the walls of the lid too thin. Once you're finished with your clay container and your lid, it'll need to dry. I would leave it drying for a couple days. And then after that, you can paint it and really work on adding those finishing touches. All right, let's check our size. Nope, we need it a little wider. So a ruler for us beginner sculptors is going to be very handy. Again, I'm making sure that our pot is not the lid of our pot is not too thin. All right. So I'm just checking in a few directions. Nice. All right. So now we have a lid that's a little wider than 6 inches in diameter, and once it dries, it should fit over our clay container very well. Now, here's a quick tip. I like to use a cookie cutter, for instance this 4-leaf clover, to help add a little surprise when you open up your container. So I'm going to make an impression on the inside of my little clay container and press that cookie cutter down. And then I'm going to do the same with the lid. And that just adds a little something special to the inside of our container. So I hope you'll consider making one of the clay containers for our 4-H festival. Have fun. If you're like me and you've never played with clay very much before, try this new experience and get creative with it. Have fun with your family, and make sure and share photos of your completed projects in the comments section below in this Facebook page. So happy sculpting.